how long have you been making skateboards and longboards?
Since 2009.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That is like right when I started working at Motion Board Shop. So you've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
What were your first boards?
I mean, they were made out of like solid planks of poplar, just like cut to shape, like super like ridiculous old school. Like I wasn't pressing anything. I was just like taking a sheet of poplar, cutting it to a shape. And then if I wanted to add a kicktail, like it was 3/4 of an inch thick. So like you kind of like sand up the bottom piece and then glue on a wedge. Like I was a junior in high school. So I was just like, all right, like this is a skateboard. Like it's fine. Yeah, so that's how it started. And then I started pressing boards out of my basement back in my house in New York and just kind of took it from there. Like made the brand, made the logo because the logo is important.
Yeah, if you don't have a logo, it doesn't even work.
Exactly. Yeah, and like here I am.
Well, I'm super excited to talk to you because you do a lot of things. Like I've worked at some skateboard companies and some longboard companies, and one of the things that like I noticed about our company is like I did a very specific small job, and when I first met you, I was like, oh, and who does your graphics? And you were like, I do my graphics. And I was like, and who designs it? And you're like, well, I mean, someone does the CAD files, but like these are all my shapes. And I was like, oh, okay, and who presses it? And you're like, me. I was like, and who does your sales? And you're like, it's also me. I was like, oh my goodness, like you do it all. Interesting. So one of the things that like I wanted to talk to you about is like for people who like you essentially started out in your home, which is how I think a lot of us like I pressed my first boards in my garage, and so pressing your first boards, like it went from cutting out a piece of wood, which is pretty much what modern race boards are. They're just flat. They're like add your own shape and put someone's name on it and you're good to go. But with like your boards, when did you go from just cutting them to shape to pressing them, and how was that transition? And was it pretty easy, or was it just like a headache like every part of manufacturing a skateboard?
I mean, at first it was absolutely miserable because I had no idea what I was doing. So like I was using an air press bag. So I was carving all the molds out of styrofoam. And then I bought some veneers and was just like, all right, like let's start gluing up boards, and like not having any idea like about, like patterns of wood grain and like how you're supposed to stack them. And like I knew like I'd been skateboarding since, pretty much I could walk. So it's like, yeah, I know that a deck is 7 plies and like there's 2 cross grains and 5 long grains, and like you just kind of slap them all together in that order, like 2 cross grain, like 1 cross grain 2, and like you're just going to be fine and that's going to be it. But that's not the case at all. And yeah, like I mean, I can't tell you how many boards I had that like delaminated and like just like warping and like all this stuff, because like I had no idea back then. I mean, it was probably about a year into building boards that I started getting into pressing, so I really hadn't done any research on anything. So I was just like, you just glue the layers together, stuff them in the bag, like up against the styrofoam mold, and like pull all the air out, and like hopefully it makes a skateboard. But after a while it came to the point where it was just like, all right, you need to have a certain humidity, like temperature control. You need to make sure that if you're looking at your long grain plies, like a tree grows in a spiral. So when the veneers are cut, like you'll see, like if you really examine a ply, that like some of the plies go this way and like some of the grains go this way. So you want to make sure that you're always making an X. Because like if you don't do that and you stack them all, like say they're all going this way, the board is going to have a tendency to warp that way. So yeah, I don't know. It took a long time.
Yeah, I'll jump in and tell you a nice anecdote about me sucking at making skateboards when I was in my garage, and not knowing what cross grains were. And so getting like, I had bought a huge like I bought multiple sheets of 4 foot by 4 foot veneer. And then I was cutting those 4 foot by 4 foot sheets myself to make the plies. And I didn't realize you needed to cut them in other directions. And so I made boards that only had lengthwise like grain running in them. And if you don't know what that does, it makes your board incredibly torsionally worthless. And so like I had made a couple, and my friends were like, this board's so sick. And so like they mounted their trucks on it, and immediately when it's like the biggest hill that has a bunch of turns in it, and they tried to like ride down the hill. And because the board has no cross grains, it like they'll like lean to the side and the whole board turns, but the trucks are still flat. So they're like, they like all rode my boards, and they all came back with road rash. I'm like, dude, this board sucks. And of course, I like spent like 2 weeks making these things. I was like, maybe you guys suck, and like come to find out like 3 months later, like 50 boards later, I was like, oh, cross grains. Like, whoa. So that was super tough. The other one is, pressing in Washington brings its own awesome challenges. Nothing like the fact that we have rain here and humidity and all sorts of like very non-conducive variables to making boards.
Nice.
So, and then for everybody who's not as familiar, so FS Boards is now Foster Skateboards. And so the entire same company, same structure, pretty much same everything. It just went from FS to Foster Skateboards.
Yep.
Which there's a lot of similarities there. You're like, yeah, FS just stood for Foster Skateboards, but now you see it's Foster Skateboards.
Yeah. And I mean, it's mainly because like we were FS boards, and the main question that I would get from people is like, oh, what does FS stand for? And it's just
what
like,
does motion board shop stand for?
Like-
and you're just like, it was just a word, and I was like, yeah, man, make the website. Here we go.
exactly. Like, so it's just like, I don't know, man. So like eventually I just got so sick of the questions that I was just like, all right, I need to make it stand for something. So then I really started to think about what like skateboarding is for me and like what I want the company to be. And like, for me, skateboarding is just like the ultimate outlet. Like, I'm not very good at skateboarding. I'd say like I'm pretty mediocre, but like I use skateboarding as like a way to like get through like all of the difficult stuff, So it's just like, and I want to use the company to help bring in other people that can use it as an outlet and like use it for something to make connection with other people and like build a community. So like that's where Foster comes from. Because I want to like foster the community, foster skateboarding, foster like the vibes.
Wow, that got deep fast.
I like that.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
definitely parental supervision needed for that depth in the pool. Oh my goodness. We are no longer standing.